Welcome to Dimensions in Chumash by Rabbi Immanuel Bernstein, part of our collective Journeys in Torah. Welcome to Dimensions in Chumash by Rabbi Immanuel Bernstein. I'm Steve Geller, and once again, I'm excited to bring you another beautiful piece on this week's Parsha. As he so often does, the details and color Rabbi Bernstein gives us has the effect of putting us right into the scene, making us feel like the events of the Parsha are happening all around us. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Our Parsha begins with Yehuda making a desperate plea to Yosef on behalf of Binyamin. The silver goblet was found in Binyamin's sack, and the brothers were now facing the inconceivable prospect of going back to Yaakov without him. Yehuda approached Yosef and said, "Please, my master, let your servant speak a word in my master's ears." Yehuda steps forward to offer a word in Yosef's ears in a desperate attempt to elicit some form of clemency from the Egyptian ruler. Yehuda starts his plea with a review of the original back and forth between the Egyptians and the brothers. But when we look closely, we notice that a number of details in this account do not match up with the events that originally happened. The first discrepancy involves the very first thing that Yehuda says. He recalls, Adoni shoal es avodav lemor. My master asked his servants, saying, do you have a father or brother? But when we look back at the first meeting between Yosef and the brothers, we see that Yosef asked them no such thing. All information regarding their family was volunteered by the brothers in order to clear themselves from the charge of being spies. But why then does Yehuda open by describing a question that was never asked? Another famous change from the actual events, Yehuda states that the brothers had originally said that one of their brothers was dead. Actually, however, they originally said that one of their brothers was missing. Why did Yehuda change the story now? Rashi comments that he was afraid that if he repeated the original version, the viceroy would tell him to bring the missing brother to him. So he changed it to say that the other brother was dead. But it had to be a much bigger risk to change the story than it would have been had he asked them to bring the brother that they already said was missing. How is changing the story here a better option? According to the Alshech, the key word in Yehuda's opening sentence is the word lemor. This word is commonly translated as saying, but many commentators understand the word lemor as the infinitive of the word amar, and translated as to say. So in the context of someone asking a question, this word indicates that one person is asking for the other person to say something back to him. Understood this way, Yehuda isn't implying that Yosef actually asked them if they had a father or brother. Rather, the questions Yosef asked were leading them to give their origin story. How so? Well, let's look at Yosef's original opening question. Me'ayin basa, from where are you coming? Although this question appears simple enough, as soon as the brothers answered, saying they were from Canaan and came to buy food, Yosef proceeds to accuse them of being spies. Where in this exchange could Yosef possibly detect any basis for such an accusation? Were these the only people from the entire neighboring land of Canaan who came to buy grain? From where are you coming is somewhat awkward. It's not the more common where are you from. It could also be understood as asking, and what brings you here? And this is the kind of open-ended question, together with the harsh tone in which it was asked, that led the brothers to feel that they should provide a more detailed response, adding that they are from the land of Canaan and that they have come to buy food. But with that response, they have also opened themselves up to suspicion. Yosef asked, from where are you from, not why are you here? So simply answering that they were in Egypt to buy food would be answering a question they weren't asked, and that could be interpreted as volunteering too much information. But again, wasn't that why everyone was there? Yosef was therefore able to claim that their stating the obvious was in order to mask the real reason that they were there, to spy on the land. So he immediately accused them of just that. According to the Beis Halevi, in this situation, the brothers felt compelled to establish their innocence, including full details of their family back home. In light of Yosef's subsequent fixation on their family from that point on, Yehuda is now, in our pasuk, able to argue that Yosef's questions from the very beginning were purely lemor, to get them to give more details about their family, which included that they had another brother. Yehuda further exposes the accusation of them being spies as clearly facetious, because Yosef proceeded to send them home to bring down their other brother. If he really suspected them of being spies who had gathered information harmful to his country, the last thing he would do would be to let them return home, allowing them to share their intel with the Canaanim. It's obvious now to Yehuda that it was precisely the information about their family and Binyamin in particular that was the Egyptians' focus from the start. But what brought on this sudden change in approach on Yehuda's part, prompting him to switch his entire strategy and confront the Egyptian viceroy with his conclusions? We just saw at the very end of Miketz, when the cup was found in Binyamin's sack, Yehuda himself accepted for them all to be slaves to Yosef. Well, what changed now? It could simply be an act of desperation in the face of the prospect of returning home without Binyamin. The Alshich explains that actually a much more meaningful change was taking place at this moment. As we saw early on, the brothers were convinced this whole predicament was punishment from heaven for their actions toward Yosef. Being in trouble with Hashem, they therefore weren't so bothered by this Egyptian or his unpredictable ways. He was just a messenger of divine retribution. But this whole theory collapsed when the silver cup was found in Binyamin's sack, because now the viceroy is saying Binyamin alone would stay with him as a slave, while the rest of them were free to return home. This undermined their understanding of what was happening. If it was punishment for the brothers who sold Yosef, why was the only brother who was not involved in that sin the only one who would have to endure the punishment? So it's not divine retribution, but apparently all coming from this Egyptian. So they began to take a closer look at the viceroy himself. Yehuda felt it was warranted to go from compliant and submissive to a more assertive posture, confronting him about his motives and behavior. There's another amazing point to consider in all this from the Beis Yisrael of Ger. 3 generations earlier, Hashem told Avraham at the Bris Bein HaBesarim that his descendants would be slaves in a land that was not theirs. Assuming knowledge of this future event was passed down to later generations, we now appreciate that although no one knew how or when this decree would unfold, there was always this prospect of servitude in a foreign land that would take place at some time. So now, when natural circumstances brought the brothers down to Egypt, with all the baffling and seemingly unnatural experiences that unfolded since, there was a sense on some level that this servitude in a foreign land was actually happening. For this reason, the brothers were prepared to surrender to what they understood as the divine decree. And now it's beautiful. This is exactly why they pronounced themselves as Yosef's servants when the cup was found in Binyamin's sack. All the cards were on the table. But again, this theory was blown up when Yosef announced that they could all return home with only Binyamin remaining as his servant. With all but one of their number being absolved of servitude, this could not be the prophecy told to Avraham coming true. So they needed another radically different strategy. One possible new strategy involved Yehuda actually considering the unthinkable. One of the great Torah sages of the 16th century, Tzfad, Rav Shlomo Halevi Alkabetz, makes a stunning comment regarding this episode. His words are cited by Rav Shmuel Laniado in his commentary Kli Chemda to our Parsha. He says, taking stock of everything that had happened, Yehuda actually started to suspect that this viceroy before him was, in fact, Yosef. Although he looked different from when the brothers last saw him and was speaking a foreign dialect, and even then not directly to them, still Yehuda could not dismiss the notion that it might be Yosef. The question was, now what? He could hardly ask him outright if he was Yosef. That would be too dangerous in case he wasn't. And Yosef could simply deny it. Therefore, Yehuda took a different approach, the first part of which brings us back to our pasuk, with Yehuda asking for the interpreter to leave the room so he could ask a question in the viceroy's ears. According to the Midrash, when Yehuda asked that he be able to speak a word in my master's ears, he was requesting to be able to address the ruler and put this case before him directly, a request that he hoped will be granted on compassionate grounds. This idea seems like a complete waste of time. Having used a translator up to this point, the viceroy was clearly indicating that he does not speak their language. However, based on the approach of Rav Alkabetz, we can understand that this was Yehuda's very intention, to reveal that this ruler really did understand his language, and that would hopefully lead to other surprises as well. This gives us a completely different understanding of the confrontation. It resulted in Yehuda pleading before Yosef, laying out their innocence and their father's anguish in full detail. Yosef, for his part, was doing his best to maintain the appearance of not understanding a word that Yehuda was saying. Is there anything Yehuda could say beyond his impassioned portrayal of their father's grief that would force Yosef to reveal that he understood what was being said to him? Well, how about changing the original conversation where they said that Yosef was missing to saying that Yosef was dead? Since its primary goal was to provoke a reaction from Yosef, who supposedly didn't understand his words, there was no more likely way to do so than to tell him he was dead. On the other hand, if this ruler was not actually Yosef and really did not understand Yehuda's words, then there was no risk at all. The change could simply go unnoticed. But as we know, Yehuda's plan worked, and by the time he was finished, Yosef could no longer withhold his identity from his brothers, and the time for the revelation had arrived. What a beautiful explanation of a scene we all thought we knew. It's for this reason that you should like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and hit the share button to paste the link to this video into emails and texts to family and friends. They will all enjoy it as much as you did.